how how the scheduling will happen, yeah, or handled in case of multiprocessing environment. As a term itself defines, it's a multiprocessor environment means we have more than one processor, right? And in case when we had single processor single processor and multiple processes, at in that case we have to do only one thing. We have to select any one process from the available processes in the ready queue, which already defined it here. Only one task we have to do. That means scheduler has only one task. It has to pick one process from here and give it to that dedicated CPU. Because we have one CPU, that means only one process can execute at a time, right? But in case of multiprocessor environment, we have more than one, greater than one number of CPUs, right? That means if you have n number of CPUs or more than one number of CPU, that means you can execute more than one process or one job at a time or single instance of time in the system. So the assumption is simple. We have six CPUs: one, two, three, four, five, six. Now in this scenario, we have two cases. We have n CPUs and we have n processes. So scheduler must do two things. First, it need to select any one process from the ready queue. From this queue, it need to select any one process. After selecting that process, scheduler must dispatch it to any any one CPU out of available CPUs, right? In our case, in this diagram, we have six CPUs. That means uh, scheduler will select one process from the ready queue and it will select one CPU out of these six CPUs to dispatch this process to that particular CPU, and that particular CPU will be responsible for execution of P1, right? In the same way, it will select another process for another CPU, available CPU. It will pick another process for another rest of the CPUs available with the system. So in case of multiprocessor environment, we have to do two tasks. We have to select process from the ready queue and we have to select the CPU, dedicated CPU for that particular process, right? So this is the working environment in case of multiprocessor environment. Okay, now when we are dealing with the scheduling in multiprocessor system, there could be two cases. One is asymmetric case or asymmetric scheduling type, or second case may be symmetric scheduling, right? Now let us check what is there in asymmetric scheduling. In case of asymmetric scheduling, the assumption is we have n number of processes in the ready queue and we have n number of CPUs available with us, right? And in case of asymmetric scheduling, what we simply state that one of the CPU will act as master or server processor, right? It will act as master or server processor, or you can in other term you can say scheduler processor, right? Because out of these n CPUs, only one CPU will be responsible for scheduling of processes among these available CPU. Understand? That means only this master process will select any process from ready queue and give it to any available CPU at the time, at single instance of time. That means all the responsibility of scheduling IO functions and all or everything will be monitored by this master CPU. this one. So in case of this example, we have CPU1 as a master CPU, right? And it will manage all the scheduling functions against scheduling policies, right? So here, this master processor will select process and select CPU for that particular process. That means rest of the processors or CPUs we have in the system can only execute given process by master CPU. They don't have capability of scheduling, right? They cannot select any process from the ready queue directly. So they need the help of master CPU. So in this type of scenario, asymmetric scenario, why we are saying it asymmetric? Because the working of CPUs are different from each other. Like this one is the master CPU. All the scheduling functions is done by this CPU. So this is this particular CPU has other nature of working, and in and these all rest of the processors will only process that given job, right? So they don't have any scheduling mechanism, or that they don't have any scheduling power or controlling power, right? That's why, because this CPU and rest of all the CPUs have different types of activity, different types of jobs during the cycle. That's why, because they are having different mechanism of working in the system, that's why we are calling them asymmetric, right? That's why. So in this scenario, asymmetric scenario, the problem is, first problem is, we have low CPU utilization. How? Because when see, this master node is responsible responsible for scheduling only, right? So this CPU cannot select any process from the queue. That means these all processors, CPU1, CPU2, CPU3, CPU4, has to wait until and unless CPU1 will not give them any process to run, and CPU1 has to select any one process from the ready queue at a time. So if you have n number of CPUs with you, that means n minus 1 number of CPUs has to wait for activity performed by CPU1, master CPU. So that means n minus 1 processes are waiting for the any action waiting for the action by CPU1. That means n minus 1 CPUs are waiting. That means we are having low CPU utilization in this case, right? And see, if you are having less number of CPUs in your system, then delays may be negligible. But in case if you have, let's say, 64 CPUs in your system, and out of these one is master and remaining 63 will be slave. That means for selecting processes for these CPUs, this CPU, master CPU, need to select 63 processes one after another for these processes. That means as the number of CPU grows, the delays in the system will grow, right? That's why this system, asymmetric system, are limited to some scale. That means poor scalability we have in this type of system. Scalability we have in the system, right? So this is the drawback of this. And the most important drawback is, because you have only one CPU as a master CPU, that means that particular master CPU will act like bottleneck. Bottleneck means every overhead comes to that particular CPU only, and in case master CPU fails, your scheduling will affect it, right? So these are the drawback of asymmetric scheduling. Now come to the next part where will understand symmetric scheduling, where we assume the assumption is that we every CPU has a scheduler within, right? We have n number of CPUs and we have n number of processes in the ready queue, and there is no master and slave CPU or processor in the system. Every processor act as master only, and every processor has its scheduler with it, right? See here, that means every processor has ability to select process from ready queue, right? That means every process can select any process from the ready queue and run it, right? So that means all the processor has similar type of job. That's why we are addressing it symmetric, because every processor in the system, either there are four or either there are n number of processors, they are having same job. That means they all are having scheduler function with that. Them they all can select process from the ready queue, right? So those CPUs are working like homogeneous manner, right? That's why these all the actions of these all CPUs are symmetric. That's why we are addressing it as symmetric scheduling, right? There could be two type of organization in case of symmetric scheduling, whether there are one global ready queue or whether there are every CPU has its own local ready queue. We will discuss both. See, if we in case one global ready queue. Now we are saying if we have ready global ready queue, what are the problems we may face, right? uh, let's say this is our ready queue, global ready queue, out of which processors will pick processes from, right? Let's say it's P1, P2, P3, dot Pn. This is our ready queue, and we are recognizing it as global. That means there is only single ready queue available with the system, which is shared by all the processors we have, in the system, CPU n. So what is the problem here? As this global ready queue will be shared with all the CPUs, that means all CPU can select process from this and use that process for completion. Similarly, CPU2 can select, CPU n can select. But problem will be there if at any time, single moment of time, let's say time t0, right? Two or more than two process, two, let's say CPU1, CPU2 will select same process, right? Because there is no mechanism that one process cannot selected by more only one CPU, right? So there is no provision. So they are free, so any CPU can select any process from the ready queue, right? So problem is at any time, any given time, like at t0, if CPU1 and CPU2 select P1 for execution, that means P1 will execute at two processor at the same time, right? So that's the problem. That's the problem. We There should be any mechanism that two processor cannot see what happen if there is no problem, but problem is there because if one process is executing on two different processors at the same time, that means you are doing what? Poor utilization of CPUs. How? Because only one CPU result could be possible, and right, and second results will be excluded, will be ignored, because this process result has came from CPU 1, so CPU 2 results will be ignored. That's why this is the wastage of time for that CPU. If this CPU can be used for rest of the processes, available processes, so you are doing poor utilization of CPU. This is the problem with when we are having global ready queue, right? Like, so for solving this problem, what we can use, we can use any locking mechanism, right? Locking mechanism means if CPU1 is selecting P1, then rest of the processes cannot select process 1. That means CPU1 has lock on P1, right? This is the locking mechanism we generally used in synchronization purpose. But the problem is, that means if you are locking any processes running in the system, that means you are again creating low utilization of the process, means rest of the processors need to wait, right? So locking mechanism is not feasible in case of if you have large number of CPUs available with you, right? Now come to the second point, second case 2, local ready queue. In this case, every CPU in the system has its own local ready queue. Every system, let's say CPU1, CPU2, CPU3, or N, directly N, right? That means CPU1 will have its own ready queue where it will allocate coming processes, let's say P1. In the same way, CPU2 will have its local ready queue. This is local ready queue, local LRQ. I am representing it LRQ. LRQ. LRQ, and processor will also have its local queue. Let's say they are having processes queued in their local ready queue: P2, P3, P4, P5, P6, P7, P8, P9. So in this case, the problem of this concurrent access has been removed. See, now every CPU has its own local queue. That means it need not to select any process from any shared queue, right? It has its own ready queue. That means it will select any process from the that queue only. Similar way, CPU2 will select any process from its local queue. That means there will be no conflict for any process. If a process is in CPU1's queue, that means it will be executed only by CPU1. And in the similar way, if any process is in CPU2 queue, that means it will be executed by only CPU2. That means concurrent access to the same process at the same time will not be there, right? But there should be any mechanism either governed by OS or user, that it will select incoming process and put it to different local queue of different processors. So it will be the responsibility of either user or operating system itself. But here the problem of load balancing will be there. The problem of load balancing will be there, and process affinity. Let's discuss first load balancing. See, let's say if time t5 we check the system, we may find that CPU1 is having 5 number of jobs in the local queue, CPU2 has 2 number of jobs to execute in its local queue, and CPU3 will have is having let's say P9 three number of processes in its local ready queue, which will be executed by CPU n. So there may be a chance. See what we are seeing, that this CPU1 is having 5 processes, this one is having 2 processes, this one is having 3 processes. That means there is no load balancing. So there should be any mechanism there where we can balance this load, right? We want that every process has approx similar number of almost same number of jobs to execute, so that at the same time or approximately same time they can be utilized or they can be executed, all the processes can be executed, and all the CPUs will be free for rest of the incoming processes, right? So there are mechanisms where os OS can what OS can do, it will monitor all the CPUs in the processes and their local queue, and in some time if it finds that any process is overburdened, what it may do, it it can it can migrate one process from one LRQ to another LRQ. Means one CPU local ready queue to another CPU local ready queue. But this migration may cost very much. Migration, this process migration, this for balancing the load, if we are performing process migration, it may cost a very high overhead overhead to to our operating system. How? Because when you are transferring this process to here, that means you need to do context switch, you need to do context switch. At that same time, all the values of the registers and memory registers will need to be copied from here, and it should be reloaded to LRQ of CPU2. So So process migration will cost a lot, right? So what we can do, because every processor have its local queue, that is the good way. But what we can do, we can use hybrid technique to solve these issues. Like we can have one ready queue global ready queue and local ready queues, local ready queues both in the system, right? To take advantage of both the mechanisms. So let's say we have P1, P2, P3 dot Pn in the global ready queue and local ready queue of one, local ready queue of process 2 local ready queue of process n, CPU 1, CPU 2, CPU n. Now CPU cannot select any process from the ready queue. OS or user will select any process and will select uh, any processor for that process. So OS will, at the round robin fashion, OS will use round robin mechanism. He will select one process, give it to CPU1, let's say P1. It will select another process, give it to CPU2. It will select another process, give it to CPU3. Next, it will select CPU4 process P4. It will give to CPU1. So by this way, this push mechanism, push mechanism, it will ensuring load balancing at the time when process gets created, right? And by this way it will give one process of one after another to the different LR queues or local ready queues available with different processors, right? So by this it will allowing load balancing, right? And even after this, even after doing load balancing at this process creation time, what we can we can have provision, what OS can have provision that after some time, let's say T10, timestamp T10, if it may feel, if OS feels that CPU1 by due to some reason, due to the large length of the processes in the LRQ, CPU1 is overburdened, then only the process migration can be used. Process migration can be used, right? So because in terms of priority, process migration has least priority because we don't do it on regular basis because it will cost a high overhead to the OS, right? That's why we generally do push mechanism. We simply allocate one processes to LRQ one after another on on round robin fashion, like that. And even if after some time we may if we find that there is a great gap or large gap between uh, number of processes in one's processor LRQ and number of processes in another process LRQ, then we may need, if required, we may migrate some processes from the overburdened CPU to the less burden CPU. But we can do it only we can do perform process migration occasionally, not at regular basis. Okay guys, so this is a hybrid method where the scheduling will be done in case of multiprocessor environment. So in case of multiprocessor environment, we have two cases where asymmetric scheduling will be happen, which is totally done by single processor, and single processor has the ability to schedule any running process in the system, any running process in the system to the available CPUs available with the system. Only one, that is referred as master CPU, right? In case of symmetric scheduling, all the processors has scheduler with them. That means all the processors has ability to select any process from ready queue and use it for execution, right? In the asymmetric scheduling, we have two scenario where we use one global ready queue. This is case one. This is case one, and where every processor has its own local ready queue. This is case 2. So in case when we are having global case one, when we are having global ready queue, that means every processor will access that global ready queue for selecting a process. So there is no problem until unless there will be conflict. So in case at the same time, if two processes or two more than two processes will select any one process for execution, that means you are utilizing your CPU poorly. That means same job is executing on two different processors at the same time. That means the task performed by one of the processor out of these two will be ignored, because it is the same task, so it will be ignored from the ignored by the OS. So that means the utilization of CPU2 will be poor. That processor could be used for any other process at the same time. So that's the problem with global ready queue. Although we can use locking mechanism, but locking mechanism will first create overhead. And second, in case if you logged any process, that means rest of the processors cannot use that particular process if they have dependency, right? If they have dependency on p1 and cpu1 has logged p1, that means all the processors needs which needs the processor one requirement will have to wait until cpu1 won't release its lock, right? So this is the drawback, right? Now in case 2, when we each CPU has its own LRQ, right? And in this case you have overcome the problem of conflict, but the introduction in the you have removed mm conflicted case at the cost of load balancing. That means here every CPU has its own queue, and they processes will be provided on those LRQs, local ready queues of those processors by either OS or users. So there may be the chance that after some time or after 2 or 3 times stamping, there may be load imbalance. Means CPU1 or CPU2 may be overburdened and rest of the CPUs are underburdened, right? So you need to have any some mechanism to balance these loads. So there is one mechanism we have, that is process migration. We can migrate or processes from overburdened CPU to lower burden CPU. Like in case of this example, we have CPU1 is overburdened, so we may migrate one process, let's say one process to CPU2, right? But this is when we are doing migration process, that means there are overhead to the operating system and CPUs has to coordinate with each other and do the proper context switching, proper reloading and unloading processes. That's why we don't do these at regular basis. So this is the problem with this case. So by using both the technique in the same architecture, we can solve many issues. Like if we are having one global queue and one an individual LRQ of each processors we have, then we may solve many problems. In this case, there will be one global ready queue for all the processors, and there will be individual LRQ ready queue of each processors at the same time, right? So from the global ready queue, OS will select the process and allocate it to the LRQ of any one process. It will select another process. It will allocate it to LRQ of other process. Next, it will select another process. It will allocate it to uh, any another process LRQ. So in similar way, it will perform these tasks, and after once the number of CPUs has reached, it will select the process and again start by initial CPU. Like in case of CPU1, like we have, let's say we have three CPUs, it will select P1 for CPU1, then select P2 for CPU2, then select P3 for CPU3, and after P3 it will select P4 for CPU1. So at round robin fashion, it will select the processes and allocate it to different LRQs available with the different processes we have. That means it is balancing its load automatically using push mechanism at the time when process gets created, right? And even after this, if sometimes, if after some time, let's say t at t10 timestamp 10, we may find that some of the CPUs has overburden and some of the CPUs are lower burden. That means we 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 can use the process migration facility with us, right? But it will, as it is overhead to the OS and CPU both. That's why we do not do this at regular basis. We perform it only on occasionally, right? So these are the multiprocessor scheduling type or multiprocessor scheduling methods we can have in the multiprocessor environment. So I think I made clear it to you and you understood it very well. And these are the types we have, and I think it is clear to you. You understood it, right? Like, right? So this is all for today. Thank you.